Greetings and welcome to another episode of Veterans of the Cedar Valley. My name is Tom Haggerty. I'll be your host for this episode. In previous shows, we've had guests from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and others that came in and talked about veterans subjects of interest to veterans. Today in the studio, we're tickled to have Nate Allison, who is an Air Force veteran, and we're going to visit with him about his career. Welcome to the studio, Nate, and I'm tickled to have you.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, now, we visited before the show, and some of the things you told me dated me. I mean, because you went to the same base for basic training, is that correct? Tell me where you went.
Yeah, Lackland Air Force Base in Texas is what I knew the name by. I went there in 2007. I enlisted into the Air Force.
For 4 years?
I did 8 years.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Nah, that's going to come up again because you had more stripes than I did. So
towards the end, maybe.
But now, how long was basic training in San Antonio?
Oh, I can't even remember. 8 weeks, I think, at the time.
Okay. It hadn't changed much.
Yeah, and it was pretty standard to the things we went through, the training, the small arms training, stuff like that.
Do you remember getting your first haircut?
Yeah, I do. It was a straight buzz.
Yeah,
and I had long hair too, yeah.
Oh, no, they love that.
Yeah, they did.
Well, then at basic training, you did the normal requirements of getting you trained and all that. Did you have a TI? Or?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Drill instructor. Yeah. So that was a pretty unique experience. It was the first time that I'd been screamed at to do everything, you know.
So, but anyway, you liked him, right?
Loved it, yeah. I loved the experience.
Yeah. Now, when you proceeded through your 8 weeks of basic training, you had a graduation on the parade grounds.
Absolutely, the parade grounds, yeah. You're right, it's still hits home.
It might have been 50 years ago, but I went through the same process. But I understand your living accommodations there probably had air conditioning and modern building. We didn't. You know,
it was a little bit different.
Not enough about me. Well, when you graduated from basic training, what was your specialty? You were going to go to another technical school, right?
Absolutely. So I wasn't really sure. I went into the Air Force. I didn't really care. I just wanted to get out of the area and do something with myself. So I went in open general. So it was whatever the Air Force needed is what I was supposed to do. So I went in and they gave me aircrew flight equipment, and that was my job. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
I love it because they told me I could be a pilot.
Yeah, of course
they
told you that.
But then they didn't tell me I couldn't wear glasses. So
right.
I got to fly a bedpan around a hospital for 4 years. But where did you go for tech school?
That was in Texas as well, at Wichita.
Oh, God, they roll up the sidewalks.
Yep, yep.
I went there for med school. So.
Oh, very cool. So before that, I did a stop in Mississippi. I thought I was going to do electronics and communications, and that was not it for me. So then they switched what I was supposed to do and moved me to Wichita Falls.
Did you get to choose that, or did
they
place you?
It was Air Force, whatever the Air Force needed at that time.
Yeah, well, that's the same as when we got a shortage in cooks or whatever.
Absolutely.
But what'd you do in Mississippi?
It was electronics training, so small computers and radio transmissions. And I did not understand any of it. So I didn't do very well in the school, and they decided I needed something different.
Hey, I was a computer programmer at the post office, and I didn't understand it. You know, so.
Well, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
But anyway, so how long after you were in Mississippi did you go to?
Spent 8 months in Mississippi, and then the tech school for what I was doing for aircrew flight equipment was only 6 weeks.
Where at?
In Texas, in Wichita Falls.
Okay, yeah.
And then my first duty station, they sent me to Utah. Yeah, all the way from there to Utah.
Wow. Okay, so at Utah, your technical school for that.
I was done. Technical school was in Texas, and then they sent me to Utah, and that was my job, my Air Force
That was
job.
Your permanent assigned
permanent
base.
duty station.
What did you do there?
Yeah, I packed parachutes, was like the most exciting thing that I did, but we did the inventory and all of the inspections for anything that could save a pilot's life. So if they ejected out of the aircraft, if they needed to survive on the ground, we inspected and maintained and issued all that to the aircrew.
So what air crew were you working with? A helicopter?
Nope, F-16, the Fighting Falcon. the best aircraft in all of the Air Force, if you ask me.
Every parachute that you packed, was it okay?
Yep. I had an incident where a pilot didn't know whether or not he was in the ground, and he inverted and crashed his airplane, but the parachute was fine.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
But how long were you there?
In Utah, 4 years, and then I got moved.
Then you went and you re-enlisted from Utah?
Yep. I re-enlisted so I could get a base of preference, so they would move me. And I wanted to be closer to home, so I went from Utah to Illinois.
Okay, and this little journey to Utah, what rank were you?
E1, so Airman Basic.
You came out of basic training as an Airman Basic.
Yep. Yeah.
How many stripes did you have when you were in Utah? 1
stripe, and then 2 stripes. And then when I went to my other duty station, I got my 3rd and 4th stripe.
You got 1 more stripe than I had, but it took you, did you do
Double
that
the
in
time.
4 years? You got 4 stripes then?
I was promoted to Staff Sergeant NCO at my 4-year mark, yeah.
Okay. Did you have anybody under you?
Yep, yeah,
Troy?
I experienced that.
Wow, how many?
3.
And they were all same assignment type as you?
Yep, the
Okay.
exact same duties and responsibilities that I had.
Did you have a regular shift, or did you have to be on call to do whatever it is that you did?
Yeah. So the flying schedule is how we worked. So they flew at all times of the day. So there was always somebody in my job maintaining the area and being responsible for the pilots that were flying.
And it was just F-16s that you were crew
Assigned
maintenance?
to.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Did you get to fly one of them?
I absolutely did.
Golly.
The most exciting experience of my life. I was in the back seat of a F-16D model, so it's got the pilot is in front, and I was in back.
And did you do a roll?
Absolutely. You've seen Top Gun. We were doing Top Gun stuff. I was actually kind of mischievous back then, so the pilot knew that, and he knew me, and we had a pretty deep relationship, so he made sure to make it rough on me, pulling lots of G's and all sorts.
You didn't eat greasy food
No.
before you went up,
No,
did you?
no, I knew the protocol.
Yeah, I did, and it didn't.
Bad idea.
Bad idea, yeah.
Absolutely.
But okay, I want to kind of come back here. Where were you born? Where'd you raise?
Manchester, Iowa. It's a little farm town
Yeah.
east on 20 from here.
Somebody had to be from Manchester.
Heck yeah.
And you graduated from high school there?
West Delaware High School.
Okay.
Yep.
And then where did you go? Air Force?
No, I thought I was going to try to play college football at Nyack, and that didn't work out. And then I took pit stop at Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids, and that did not work out, and went to the Air Force.
This is so close to some of my relatives. But I mean, anyway, so tell me about your family a little bit.
Currently?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am married to my wonderful wife, Christy. She's a midwife at Mercy One, and we have 4 kids. We have 3 girls and 1 boy.
Are they old enough to be in the Air Force yet?
No, not yet. I don't know what their life plans are.
Okay. And you're living in Cedar Falls?
Yeah, we live right between Cedar Falls and Waterloo, the best of both worlds.
Well, yeah, okay. You've got the right town in Cedar Falls.
Heck yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. But
I work
anyway.
in Cedar Falls.
Good. Where do you work at?
I have a podcast.
That's
I
right.
host a podcast called The World with Nate Podcast.
And what does that involve?
Yeah. So I tell other stories. I'm the host, a little bit like you're doing here, Tom. Heck yeah. And I speak with individuals about their life stories, some of the trials, tribulations, things that they've went through and overcame, trying to spread hope, light, perseverance in today's world.
Yeah, I've listened to some of them. I don't understand what podcasts
I
are
appreciate
yet, but I'll catch up with you.
Heck
on
yeah.
it,
Modern day radio.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, hopefully they won't eliminate it.
Nope.
Anyway, but okay, did you get deployed overseas at all?
Yeah. So I was in active duty Air Force at my base, my first assignment, for 9 months before we got orders to Iraq. And that was in 2009. We left in January 2009 and got back 189 days later.
Now you say we were deployed. That means your crew,
Yes.
the crew you trained with and worked with, all got deployed to Iraq at the same time.
Absolutely. It was the 4th Fighter Squadron. We went as a unit with F-16 aircraft attached and flew as a group over there.
The pilots go too?
Yep. Pilots
Okay.
flew the airplanes over.
So you guys were pals all the way through this. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Very
and
close-knit.
what was the biggest town or air base in Iraq that you were at?
Balad Air Base, and we flew through the airport in Baghdad. So
Balad?
Balad Air Base, yep. Yep. It used to be called Camp Anaconda in the
okay.
beginning of the Iraq War.
And that was a pretty good sized base.
Yeah, it was large, yep.
Was it Air Force or just Army or everybody?
Air Force and Army. There was also a Marine component there as well.
And being that you were in the desert,
Yeah.
was there a lot of problems with your equipment then?
It takes a toll flying in all of that debris, and it's dusty all the time. So that definitely took a toll. Maintenance was ramped up. We had to do extra stuff. It was difficult because we were getting mortar rounds and small arms fire. People were attacking the base every day. So that made the everyday nuances a little bit tougher to accomplish.
Kind of messed up your sleep schedule, didn't
Oh, a
it?
little bit, yeah, yeah.
Now, okay, being you talked about mortar rounds and stuff on
Yeah.
the base, did you ever get to go up in the helicopter?
No, never did that. I flew into and out of Iraq on a C-130, and that's a big cargo airplane that took people, but that's as far as being outside of the wire. We went out a couple times on some convoys to deliver dental supplies and stuff to the people.
But you were in charge of maintaining and upkeeping one F-16 or Mini.
And all of the F-16s in the fleet, all of the
Okay.
equipment for all of the pilots.
So the pilots were your best friend, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They loved us. If we did our job, they brought us beer to reward us for packing good parachutes.
In Iraq?
No, not in Iraq. No.
Okay. Did they ever take a hit on their helicopter or?
Absolutely. There would be things that would happen periodically, like bird strikes, hitting a bird or something. As far as in Iraq, it was air to ground. So we were dropping bombs on insurgencies and such. There was no air-to-air combat. So as far as taking hits, not really. The threat was pretty low for that sort of thing.
So what would be the worst repair job that your crew had to do on an F-16?
Well, repacking the parachutes was the hardest.
Really?
Hardest thing that we did. There's so many steps, and it's so crucial that everything's done right so it performs. So that was a pretty stressful job with a lot of checks and balances.
Now, the rest of your crew, were they specialists in other things?
We were all trained on all of the equipment.
Okay.
So everybody had a little bit of training on everything. And then within our unit, there were subject matter experts, but we tried to remain constant and train through all of the different things.
So when you're in Iraq at this base, was it an Air Force base or a
Multinational. There
Okay.
were third country nationals there. There were an Iraqi component, Army, Air Force, and a Marine component there.
Okay. Now, who was your boss when you were there?
A lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. So the boss of the flying squadron is who I was attached to.
But the Air Force was your command report,
Absolutely.
okay?
Yep.
And so a guy from the Army couldn't come in and say anything to you without...
I guess it depended what his rank was. You
Yeah,
know?
right. Well, yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, okay. Now, how long were you in Iraq?
Just over 6 months.
And then where'd you go?
And then right after that, I got back and we went back to Utah, which was our duty station. And then shortly after that, we got tasked again to deploy to Afghanistan. And I got orders to Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. So the rest of my crew went to Afghanistan, and I went to Scott Air Force Base, Illinois to fill a different need for the Air Force.
Well, at least you got out of Utah.
Yep,
You know, I mean,
and closer to home,
yeah.
which is what I wanted. I was starting a young family, so.
Were you able to get home when you went to Illinois or Utah? Were you able to get
We
home?
periodically got vacation, or I guess it wasn't vacations back home, but it was tough because we were constantly being spun up and training for deploying and going to war, so it was hard to get away.
Okay, you used the term spun up. What's that mean?
Spun up, getting ready to go downrange to deploy.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of training and qualifications that need to happen prior for you being ready to go to a war zone, and those were all the things that needed taken care of before we left.
Well, I'm just tickled about the similarity in what I went through 52 years in
Absolutely.
the Air Force, and you went through it again, and nothing much, according to what I asked you, has changed.
Absolutely.
You know? But I want to ask you a question, Nate. Would you recommend people, men and women, going into the Air Force, out of high school, out of college, or just going into the Air Force?
I am a huge proponent of military service. It did wonders for me, but I needed it. So it's hard to say that every person needs it, but it really has the ability to give you a lot of structure and guidance in your life, and to realize that there's more out there than just self. It's a big picture. Life is full, and it gives you the opportunity and the courage to discover those things.
A previous guest I had on the show called it a grow-up method.
Oh, absolutely, really quick.
You know.
I was 19 years old in Iraq, working with millions of dollars of equipment and people's lives in my hands, and I didn't bat an eye. I was ready for it.
Okay, I don't mean to ignore you brought some things from the Air Force.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I called it a bus driver hat, but I had the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit about the medals that are on the
Absolutely. So my family heritage, it runs pretty deep in the military, and one of these medals, all three of these medals, are my great uncle's medals. So he was a bomber pilot in World War II, flying missions over Nazi Germany, and it just speaks for itself, the things that he was able to do.
How many missions did he fly?
24, I believe, in the B-24, and then 17 or a little bit less, maybe 13 in the B-17.
I can't remember, but my father-in-law was similar. He was an upside-down turret gunner.
Absolutely.
I don't remember how many missions they had to fly on in order to come home.
Yeah.
How long did your...
He was over there a long time. He was a captain when he was in World War II, so he flew a lot and rotated over there. As far as how long, I don't know much of his story. It's been lost in family history, and I haven't got a chance to get back.
Was he your influence?
Absolutely. Being a younger child, my mom took me down to Tennessee, where he was retired at, and the stories that he was able to provide me with lit me up as a kid, and that's the reason why I chased the dream.
Yeah, good. Another question I want to ask you is that when you went into the Air Force and you were assigned to electronics?
Yeah, electronic principles is what it was.
Was that like computer?
I didn't know what it was at the time. It was radios and all sorts of tech.
And they put you in there because they needed
That's what they needed, and I scored well on the entrance level test to be qualified for that job.
But you said you weren't really familiar with it, right?
Not at all, no. I had no background in technology or any of that.
Wow. Well, neither did I. But I'm still not familiar with what you do as a podcaster.
Yeah.
I have a nephew that does that
Yeah.
out in California, and just tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I try to find these interesting stories and these people who have things to speak on that have happened in their life. I get a conversation going with them over the airwaves, and we talk about things that they have pursued, things that they've overcame, and it provides hope for the listeners. The listeners can listen to it, and they can learn a little bit about other people's lives, and that helps us all gain a better sense of understanding what's going on in this world.
Okay. You didn't retire from the Air Force, right?
No.
You went.
My service commitment was up. I signed up for 8 years. I did my 8 years, and I chose not to re-enlist.
Why were you in for 8 years when it was 4?
2 4-year assignments is what I signed up to do. That was my enlistment contract.
Okay. But you decided then that you didn't want to stay in.
Yep, I started having kids. I had 2 children at the time, and I would be home for 4 months at Scott Air Force Base, and then deployed for 4 months to Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, which is over in the Middle East, a little portion off near Saudi Arabia, Egypt area if you look on a map. It's a desert country, so going there every other 4 months was not my ideal of how I wanted to continue living my life, so I had to say goodbye to the Air Force.
And I forgot to ask you about Qatar.
Qatar, yep. Qatar, people pronounce it a little bit different.
Spell it.
Qatar.
And that was just below Iraq, or is it just connected to it? Or?
It is in the area right off the right-hand side of Africa. If you look at a map, you'll see it, tiny little country, oil-rich country. They provided an air base inside of their country for the Air Force, and that's where we occupied.
Was the Air Force the only one that had a base?
There, where I was, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you've done an interesting amount of stuff
I was very fortunate.
for your young age, and we're about ready to wrap up the show. I want to thank you first off for your service in the Air Force to our country, and also your uncle, who was the same thing, service to our country.
I appreciate that.
And I look forward to maybe, watching and learning what your podcasts are about, and learning all that. I'm too old to learn technical stuff.
We'll get you taught, Tom, I promise.
But again, thank you for being with us as our guest.
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad to have another Air Force veteran on the show. We've been doing the show for a number of years, and my predecessor, Sid Morris, was basically the founder of this show, and he used to do a number of shows, and I replaced him. And anyway, I'm getting to that retirement age too, but I'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in the show with Nate Allison from the Air Force, and I want to thank everybody for having watched all the shows that we've had, and look forward to seeing you on some additional shows. So thank you very much.